Good evening. Before I start, I would like to take a quick second and introduce to you all and to the public our newest department head, Mr. Patrick Madigan. He is our Director of Public Works. He's back here. Take your mask off so they can see your face, Patrick. They can know you're real. So that's Patrick. Mr. Madigan will be responsible for water, wastewater, what was traditionally our development services, so buildings and property maintenance permits, as well as our public works operational office out on Maple. It's very excited.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Beyond that, I have my traditional normal update, but I will save that for next week. There's just a few things I wanted to cover for you all as kind of a special kind of discussion with regards to ARPA and some project proposals for consideration with the 5-cent tax increase that we implemented as part of the FY22 budget. Starting with ARPA, you all have a handout, just a little one-pager. It has the broad categories that are approved for the federal relief dollars. As you all may recall, we were allocated $6.8 million. We received our first distribution of those funds. It was half of the distribution, so we have about $3.4 million currently. We've been working based on what we have in place as far as known needs from our comp plan, our downtown recovery and revitalization plan, and our infrastructure needs, as well as some utility needs to identify some potential uses that fall within these legal parameters of the categories, which are broad yet have to have proven measurable outcomes, proven COVID impacts. So one of the things that we've looked at that fits into those categories of existing needs and COVID impacted areas is affordable housing, looking at trying to further advance affordable housing and the revitalization efforts of our downtown, as well as with our Rivermont School project. There's possibilities of doing no interest loans that can then be paid back using these dollars. Many localities are actually moving forward with focusing a large chunk of their dollars on affordable housing. Also looking at using or recommending and further review of implementation of some of the core strategies from the Old Town Recovery and Revitalization Plan that Head Down provided for us. That was released publicly on Friday. If you all had an opportunity to look at any of that study and the plan, what it called for, things such as a small business coordinator, working to create grants for target industry businesses, incentive and performance-based grants for businesses, example, creating X number of new employment positions in certain targeted areas, trying to target specific types of businesses to come to an area that's in need of recovery and revitalization. As you all know, Main Street was hit especially hard during COVID. We had started to have a good buzz on Main Street before COVID, and we've now gone to, a 22% vacancy rate. There's 19 empty storefronts last time I walked the whole 4 blocks and counted. So those are one of the things that we're looking at, as well as working on programming it under the infrastructure piece for EQ basin construction. As you all know, the market's been very volatile with construction inflation. So, the original amount, our project came in at about $700,000 more, just because of sheer material cost. There's the option of using ARPA dollars to offset that, as well as using ARPA dollars under infrastructure, water, and wastewater categories for our I&I plan efforts tied to our consent order, as well as trying to do additional drainage improvements as special projects, as that helps our stormwater and wastewater operations, and utility revenue recovery, doing utility payment programs and trying to offset the revenue losses we've had in that operation with the moratorium on shutoffs. We have a significant number of accounts that are in the arrears. Those were some of the high-level plans, things for consideration. Falling under those, support for public health response, replace public sector revenue loss, water and sewer infrastructure, the negative economic impacts, ways to address it, premium pay for essential workers, which is something we do plan on doing. It is specifically for those that fall in public safety or front lines. So that constitutes, for instance, your solid waste employees that ride on your refuse trucks, your landfill employees, your wastewater employees would not inherently qualify your water treatment plant employees. But we're also working on strategies for how we address that as well. Any questions? Any red flags in what we're trying to brainstorm as far as uses?
Back in the close to the beginning, you were talking about possibly some no-interest loans.
No interest loans or very low interest loans. I mean, we can't essentially we can do grants or loans. You can't make money off of the federal money, but targeting it for affordable housing to spur, the need that we have for diversified housing stock. One of the reasons I suggested that is, we have worked really hard trying to get a competitive application for Rivermont School. We fell short in that we didn't have project-based vouchers, essentially the traditional housing vouchers associated with that project. The challenge is there's a very small, limited amount allocated to the city of Covington. There's only 58 that are allocated to actually Covington and Allegheny total. Having a local match or local dollars contributed significantly enhances the score of the application. This coming year will be the second submission, and we are only, in all of our performance agreements, it was only designed to do 2 submissions. So that would be a major recommendation that we would want to try to research more and put before you all. I also think too, doing a grant or a non-interest bearing loan for a developer with that may help just with the palpability of the project, considering that then there would not be any vouchers potentially then associated with the project at all. It would still be affordable workforce housing based on income guidelines and targeting your workforce folks or fixed income folks, but it wouldn't have the vouchers tied to it, which is also an easier sell to your community, and it's just easier with reporting. Vouchers have a very strict reporting process.
So we offer a no-interest loan from the ARPA money.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we get paid back, does that become a revolving loan?
You could potentially structure it that way. I'm not 100% sure yet. We're working with Mr. Lockerbie and Mr. Popovich on exploring that. We also had a meeting with our municipal advisors, Mr. Sanderson and Mr. Rose, to discuss that. And we also met with Mr. Downey, who assists with the EDC and with Head Down on those topics, the affordable housing and recovery of Main Street, to try to identify as much that we can fit under the umbrella.
So you also said business grants?
Yes, for looking at target industries and then performance-based grants.
So would a target industry or target small business?
We can target, it would be intended to target small businesses that we can have that visible and easily measured impact from COVID. As you recall, Main Street in the downtown district, had quite a few businesses close at the start of the pandemic and throughout the pandemic.
So a restaurant?
A restaurant, yeah, that was one of the target industries identified in the plan. They identified several types of restaurants, family dining, then, more so medium to upscale dining, those types of things, and also performance-based, meaning X amount of time open, X amount of employees hired, those sorts of things. And again, The General Assembly just ended their special session, so we're still learning about the state programs and the guidelines affiliated with the Department of Treasury and what we can use all of this for. The finance director and myself just had a meeting with our legal counsel and our municipal advisors last week. So this is an evolving topic. We just wanted to share with you some of the thought process or ideas that we're starting to come up with just to get a pulse and make sure we're not putting out any red flags and spinning our wheels on something that is a no-go, if that makes sense.
And we would possibly have the ability to hire a
small business coordinator, yes, with the funds. To also work on marketing and promoting of our historic downtown area for the recovery and revitalization of it. Creating a resource center for our downtown area. It was mentioned that that could also help with some of the preliminary work to make the Gordon's building a little more attractive to developers. You can put a resource center in there and invest some dollars. One thing that we have heard from folks is the need to have natural light. All the windows in that building have been covered up. So just various things. Any other questions on that? The other update I wanted to share with you is we had talked during the budget season that once we started the fiscal year, we would work to try to identify some additional projects within the realm of public works where we could put the tax dollars that we have from the 5-cent tax increase, the additional revenue, to work. So we have worked with our Deputy Director of Public Works and Mr. Dressler, the former Interim Director of Public Works, to come up with the concept of trying to split 50-50, the roughly, it's about $80,000 between paving and sidewalk work. Those are two areas that are in great need. We have a lot of sidewalks that are in great need. We were proposing to, one, address Durant Road in front of Wendy's, where we had the core drilling work done, which identified the need to basically go down 24 inches and repave a section to address the sinking or this, obviously the settling of the pavement, because we've kind of just done the standard mill and overlay over that quite a few times. Targeting areas like Marion for paving, sidewalks Monroe between Oak and Cherry, that's a heavily pedestrian area, sidewalks in front of the car shop on Highland, sidewalks in front of the Eric Funeral Home, and the sidewalks in front of Christie's Cleaners. So those are on Highland, and that's a major commercial corridor as well where there's a lot of pedestrian foot traffic. So those were proposed areas. Any thoughts, questions on that? Those are pedestrian heavy areas, and then again, paving is just, it's through and through throughout the city. One thing I have asked is our Director of Public Works, Mr. Madigan, to work with Mr. Howard, the Deputy Director, to revisit our previous paving list, to review the prioritization of it and potentially do any updates that may be needed. Essentially, we haven't been re-ranking streets on an annual basis that are on that list to check for additional deterioration. You know, one year street may be fair, but it could significantly decline in a year based on weather, traffic, other things. So working from that list, potentially working to reprioritize based on what we know the community needs are, and going from there. We are still working to bid out mill and overlay as well as slurry application for this next coming fiscal year. For this fiscal year, FY22, we have completed the FY21 paving. Questions on that?
Comments.
Okay.
A good friend Raymond sitting over here. Lincoln Avenue is yours. That thing's all. It's probably the worst road we got.
Yep.
And then corner of Chestnut and McGrow to the lower area around the Bath County Clinic. there's some trip hazards in there that if they're not going to the clinic, they may need to go in once they walk in through there. So those two places are probably key places to look at. I thought Lincoln was on the list, is already on the list.
Lincoln is on the list for paving. What we want to do is revisit that list and see if there's streets that need bumped up based on the current condition. As you all remember, that list was developed several years ago, and we've just essentially been going through it as a checklist rather than strategically assessing that list every year to figure out if one road has deteriorated faster than the other. So that's one thing that I have asked the new Director of Public Works to do, and he has been tasked with trying to come up with a prioritization of that, working with our Deputy Director of Public Works as one of his first core responsibilities.
Up in that area of Lincoln, and I guess you go over into the Altamont.
That's Patrick.
Patrick. Yeah, there's a street up there that you used to could come off of Gray Street and come down to Lincoln.
Yeah.
I think it's so bad you can't get through there now.
It's covered up there with the trees and gully work. You're not even able to come down there.
We'll take a look at it. And then I will say, the concern is with some of the sidewalk there at the location that you referenced that has the Bath Community Clinic. The condition of the sidewalk is such that we may end up, if that is what we choose to tackle, that would very well eat up the 50% of the increased tax revenue that we targeted for sidewalks.
So you may be
It is extensive.
Maybe able to talk to them and see if they'd like to split the cost since it's their sidewalk.
Technically, city's public right of way. I think throughout that area, the big issue is that we get a lot of washover from the parking lots, especially gravel and other things, and over time, that will deteriorate your sidewalk as well. You go through that area anytime after a heavy rain, that whole strip, the sidewalk gets covered up with gravel from the lots and other things.
In the past, hasn't there been sidewalk projects that the residents contributed to?
Yeah.
Temple might be able to remember that. In the past, that's what I thought.
Yeah, 50%, I think it was.
That's what I think is right.
Doesn't technically the sidewalk in front of your property your responsibility?
It is with snow. And
It's with keeping it clear for snow, for grass, keeping any, you're not supposed to store your personal property on the sidewalk, those kinds of things. So, household white goods, those kinds of things.
When we talk about paving list, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, getting more projects than money, but are we going to look at some point when we have the discussion of something like an Allegheny Avenue house, 9411, I believe it is. Are we looking at that list also?
We are trying
We
to
have been, what, every year going in and re-looking at that and reapproving it
And I have asked from you all to start to try to have a strategic discussion because we have increased the funding for it, but still we have more need than there is funding for blight and abatement to start trying to potentially tackle major thoroughfares and then work our way inwards on some things. We've been working to try to strengthen our approach to property maintenance and code enforcement. We are down staffing, but we are working to increase our field presence. We have someone in the field 3 days a week, and they are steadily putting out notices of violations. We are doing what we can for the 411 North Allegheny property. We have sent a formal letter. We are also issuing notices of violations for that property. Beyond that, that's about all we can say with that one. But yes, I would like to be able to have a strategic discussion based on that list of what are we going to prioritize that's on thoroughfares first and work our way inward. Not dismissing anyone's blight issues in their neighborhoods, but recognizing that we need to also be concerned with the first impression we give when folks come through our communities to the park systems, most of which are on the other end of the county, going through 220, and when they're coming through our commercial district, and making sure that we are staying on top of that and leaving a positive impression.
While we're talking about code enforcement, and Chief might be able to fill in. And for example, say my property's grass gets, and you get a complaint on it. Is that
No.
least still that?
No,
Okay.
it is with code enforcement.
So it gets to 12 inches. A notice is sent to me. I've got 30 days.
No, you've got a period of, I believe it is 72 hours
Okay.
to cut it. Then we issue the notice and we schedule the mowers.
All right, because I was asked how that process went, and I don't think I ever asked before. Because, you know, I know y'all here too, places that they get high, and they get the letter, and then we get asked, why haven't it been mowed yet? There's a little sign in the yard, and so turnaround is,
So you have 3 days to mow once we give you the initial placard in the yard that says your grass is too high. If that does not occur, we issue you the letter and the statement saying that the mowers have been dispatched. The mowers get a new cut list every week.
okay.
So like this week, they're working on stuff they were provided last week.
Okay.
So for instance, I just received a few addresses this evening. Those will be added to the list next week.
Okay,
Because they get a list on a rolling basis.
okay.
Sometimes they work through on additional things as they come in. We can group them by location, if that makes sense. But generally, they get the list the week before because we try to group by locations.
So going back to my yard, I get a letter, I don't mow it, you dispatch folk, they come mow it, you send me a bill.
We send a bill.
Now, if I'm an absentee property owner, which in my case that I've seen, and probably y'all's, absentee property owners, where does that bill go? A tax lien, or how do we recoup that cost?
Initially, the bill and the notice goes to the registered address based on tax billings. If there's a failure to pay, we do, after a certain process, place liens on the property. And then that gets doubled in with potentially any back taxes, other things, and that goes through the treasurer's office.
So if a house gets foreclosed on, and there's one that I know of that I hear about all the time, and I think it might be your district's on Fudge. You got, because you got preacher's side of Fudge, right? That it's probably going to be foreclosed on. What happens then? I mean, so you've got a tax lien, but it's going to foreclosure. Who, at the end of the day, how, on a case like that, do we get any money back? Or in a case like the one on Allegheny, you know, we're going to end up spending, and I want to do whatever we can to help this craft out. But at some point, we're going to have to recoup some kind of cost. Is there a way in those cases where we recoup those costs?
So in the instance such as the property on Allegheny Avenue, there is no guarantee that you will ever recoup your cost. There are some properties where we're dealing with that are known and have been on the radar for years where there are multiple lien holders, meaning that the city is not even the only lien holder for taxes and grass and other things. That's where it also gets complicated. So for instance, in a foreclosure, usually when there's a resale or transfer of the house, all liens get satisfied as part of the purchase price. And I could be wrong on that, but Mr. Popovich, that he's nodding his head.
Okay, that's correct.
So in theory, you know, for instance, then if a property was ever sold to another individual or to another company, any and all liens that exist with it that haven't been released have to get satisfied as part of that purchase price.
Now, and I was going to ask something, I forgot what it was. What was it, Tommy?
That's okay. We'll be back next week.
Oh, now, to make sure that everybody, since Ms. Kraft has been here publicly, we are on the track now, right? For her property.
We are working on issuing notices of violations, filing things with the court, yes.
Okay.
We are making sure that we also have liens filed for the mowing,
Okay.
in addition to the other many liens on that property.
I just want to make sure we're making forward progress with that one since it got kind of held up.
Correct, and we are doing the best we can. We also, the staff that we have doing that, it is a new function for them. They are newly trained and certified in property maintenance and code enforcement, especially the property maintenance piece. So they are doing their best at this time as well.
Okay.
Krystal, is Hillcrest still on the paving list?
It's on the list, but we also need to assess all of the paving needs, because the list that we have as far as the paving schedule, was developed roughly, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And we've never, and it could be longer than that. And all I'm saying is, we've not gone back each year and then assessed if others have deteriorated and needed bumped up. I will say in the dry run area, we have spent a considerable amount of city funds in the last year to year and a half on various projects.
I've been walking that road because I'm walking daily. There's 90% of the alleys in Covington are in better shape than that road. There's parts of the road that don't even have any asphalt left on them. There's 17 houses up in there. I mean, they're all taxpayers too.
I fully agree. The challenge we have had with that road is that it has been, it was formerly a logging road, so it's already very narrow and other things. There's lots of heavy equipment that goes through that neighborhood to go to a house that's up at the top.
That can be stopped by all we've got to do is have a weight limit put on that bridge.
That bridge does not meet the criteria for posting a weight restriction. It is not on the inspection schedule. It is not long enough. It's not in VDOT's system. So it is solely a city bridge.
But can't that road be restricted like other streets?
We can close it.
For truck traffic?
We can restrict truck traffic through there, but then we get down to an enforcement piece.
I mean, restricted like we do on other streets. I mean, isn't that a possibility?
It's a possibility. It's just a very challenging area to perform enforcement of for our law enforcement officers. But that is something that does contribute to the wear and tear of that road.
I mean, you try to walk it and you're stepping holes this deep and there's no pavement left there at all. I mean, it's a hazard. I mean, I know we did the creek up there, but that was in agreement to fulfill some other things that were going on anyway.
Well, that was also a very needed project there, and we also did a work regarding a retaining wall, a rock wall that was there, and adding some grass to help with.
Which needs cutting. About a foot and a half tall.
Anything else? Thank you all.